So in this section I'm going to talk a little bit about evaluating the resources that you have searched and found. So to evaluate is to determine significance or worth by careful appraisal and study. So basically we are checking their worth. We found a whole bunch of articles, a whole bunch of resources, and now we'll appraise them and see what they are worth. So what we want is the excellent type of stuff. So just briefly to summarize this stuff, and this is another way of putting your research and your information literacy type of things. So you define your topic, identify your resources you're going to search, you use journals and you do your actual searching, you search the databases, you locate your resources, then you could go to the web as we discussed earlier as the last thing. Now all the stuff that you have collected and found, you want to evaluate it. So we are basically at this last among the last steps here to evaluate and use them. And part of the evaluation is determine what's good and what's not so good. And of course what's left here is that you'll cite those sources and use that information ethically and legally. So, and that completes the whole loop basically. So types of tools that you'll use when you're doing a search for different articles on using databases, and you'll probably see 3 different types of results that get displayed there. So sometimes you'll see an index. So an index usually is basically a listing of the sources or the results of your search. So you'll go to a database, you'll see an index of all the results that were found. At other times you'll see an abstract. The abstract, it includes citations or pieces or summaries from an article. And then you have also full text articles. So the full text, it's going to give you the actual content of the journal or the article. So the idea here for these 3 types of tools in databases, when using databases, are that sometimes you'll just get a bunch of results, just a listing of stuff. Other times there will be the abstracts, just a summary of the stuff, and you'll say, well, those are not useful to me. Well, the usefulness of these comes into that, let's say you are not able to find the full text stuff online. What you could do, at least you know what the name of the article is. And then you could track it down and find it through whatever source is interlibrary loan or some other way that you can track down that article. The abstract would be helpful because it tells you what that article is about, so that you don't waste your time retrieving an article that when you eventually find it, it does not contain what you need. Most useful type of article that you want is the full text articles. Whenever you see online databases, you're doing your searches, you'd want to look at the full text articles. Other things as far as evaluating of your findings, you need to ask yourself the question, can I trust this source? For example, if you go to somebody's website, or it's their blog, or it's their Facebook page, you probably couldn't trust that source as authoritative in that topic, or as authoritative for that subject or for that matter. For example, what some 15-year-old writes about, let's say, the interpretation of a verse in the Bible does not mean that that's probably the truth, or that he's a scholar about it. So here are some things to keep in mind, questions that you should ask yourself about it. So you ask yourself, when was this article last modified? If it was years and years ago, then probably it's not relevant. So what you want is something that is relevant, depending on your topic, of course. As far as the trusting of the website here, you'd find yourself, for example, mainstream sites that deal with that specific topic. For example, CNN Business probably would be a good one, or Fox News Business would be another site that you'd trust. But if it's a blog out there, you'd have to kind of find out who the author is, what the affiliation is, what his expertise is, and things of that nature. Then, is the material, you'd ask yourself the question, is the material subjective or objective? Are they covering the topic? Is that blog directly dealing with economics, or is it just a sideline article that this person is writing at one point in time? And then, are there any references or other works cited. Like some of the articles online out there, they're going to be listing you all the references that they used for their research. And if it has those references, that's what makes this article more trustworthy. Then, is there a stated sponsor for the site? For example, if it's published by a university or a foundation or a major company or research company, then you trust that report. So again, all of these are to help us determine whether these findings are valuable for our research. And then finally, is it clear who authored that article and what site it was published? So when it comes to the internet, and this would be the final step that I'd recommend in using the internet for your research, you could use it in the very beginning to just get a general idea, but not to base your research. Again, the idea is you search all these encyclopedias, the journals, the databases, the library catalog, you read books, you check all these different sources, and then if you still cannot find what you need, that's when you go to the regular Google searches or other Bing searches and that. So other things that you could check for the reliability of articles, check the the author's name and association. Just do a Google search for it. Check how often the work has been updated and how the work has been updated. For example, in the case of Wikipedia, so in Wikipedia, it's free. Anybody can go and update those articles. I could go and change any of the articles, for example, for Cairn University facts and all that type of stuff. You can go and change them. Usually what happens is that within a few minutes, if you change it with the incorrect information, somebody else is going to update it with the correct information. But what happens with the information that was changed and updated during that time when it was incorrect? So you can't base your research. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use Wikipedia, but don't base your research on Wikipedia. Things valuable that you could use with Wikipedia is that usually at the bottom of the page for Wikipedia there is citations. Go through those lists of citations. Those will give you ideas. Look at the pros and cons of using that specific resource. So yes, is it quick? Is it going to have the most up-to-date information? Probably yes. The con, what's against it, is that it could have incorrect information. So that was basically as far as evaluating resources. Other things to keep in mind as you're doing your research here is keeping in mind when you put together your research after you have selected the sources, searched for those sources, and evaluated those sources. When you're putting your papers together, you need to keep in mind plagiarism and copyright. Be mindful of that. I'm going to post something on the site as to how to avoid plagiarism, so check that out, because it's going to be very important. This is the key, as we have discussed also in the previous lecture, that in the previous discussion, that copyright and plagiarism, it's a major issue nowadays, and simply copying something from the web and pasting it into your paper does not make it your research. Whatever you copy, whatever you cite, it needs to also properly be documented where you got it from and cited in your bibliography or works cited. So for that, you need to check the link on the page for plagiarism.